Hi there, I am Bethany Londyn, founder of healthAddiKt and the Mainstream Mission, where we are taking the alternative out of alternative care. We are looking to raise consciousness around health and well-being, and we're bringing to you stories from different people that have different backgrounds, whether it's a doctor or fitness expert or someone that's cured themselves through stretching. There are so many different unique and alternative methods that people aren't even aware of. And so we're here to share that journey with you. And I'm so excited that you've come to listen. And please share if this supports you with your people, because everyone deserves to hear these amazing messages of people taking on their health. So, thank you again. Yeah. All right, thank you everyone for joining us today at healthAddiKt. Tessie, Bethany, and we have the fabulous Mike Weeks here today, he has a little involvement in everything.
Not quite everything.
Coaching, healthcare, which is why we brought him on, and nutrition, books, movies, media, you name it. He has like 5 or 6.
I'm running out of fingers in pies.
He's worked with thousands and thousands of people. I'm calling him the European Tony Robbins, but really we have a inclination towards him.
I'm the European Mike Weeks.
He's the European Mike Weeks.
And I'm sure there are many other Mike Weekses if you look through the phone book. Do they still use phone books now with the internet?
No.
No. So, ladies, what brings you here?
So, we wanted to talk to him first off about his story, his background, because it's fascinating, and how he ended up working with coaching in weight loss and nutrition.
Yep. So, as with all stories, I don't know if you know this, but memory is a generative and deductive process, meaning that every time that we have an experience, we memorize it in various cortical brain areas, or even not even just in the brain areas, in our whole neurology. So every time we recall a memory, we actually re-piece it again, because it exists in different sections. So the kinesthetic, or the feeling part of the memory, is stored in one area, the visual is stored in another, the auditory, the hearing, the taste. So just bear in mind that any stories that I tell you are only partially true.
I also immediately thought of Inside Out, the movie.
I haven't seen it.
Oh man, it's great. It's like all the different parts of the brain are different character or personality. They all work together.
Like Sandra.
It's great.
I'll watch it.
Yeah.
So one of the versions of my reality that has probably changed since the first time I told it, how I got into the health field. I was a professional rock climber for the best part of 10 years, and in a constant attempt to increase my performance, I studied, and I also very much dived into various eating plans. I was a vegan for 2 years. Part of that was due to the ethical issue of not wanting to kill animals, which was slightly ironic because I grew up hunting and shooting and fishing. So I did veganism. That destroyed my health, and I converted over to vegetarianism, and by increasing dairy and eggs in my diet, I started to restore it. And then one day I hit over a kangaroo accidentally while I lived in Australia. And from my sort of spiritual stance at the time, I studied a lot of indigenous cultures. I decided that I should eat this thing because it would be a kind of tipping my hat of sign of respect. And I remember eating some of this kangaroo thinking I was going to be violently ill afterwards. The next morning I woke up feeling like I was 10 years younger.
Whoa.
And and I don't mind being really transparent about this. My sex drive the next morning, it was like somebody had pumped Viagra into me overnight.
Wow.
Right. And bear in mind that, and we can get onto this, is that
Kangaroo pills.
well, if you think about it, sex drive as a sign of biological function is one of those things that in very healthy organisms is thriving because of a lack of stress and because of the right nutrient quotas and the right, as a professional rock climber who was eating a vegetarian diet and training constantly and running constantly, my body was under a huge amount of stress. So a bit of kangaroo revolutionised my approach to eating. On the back of that, I started looking at high protein diets. This was in my 20s, I'm 40 now. I know I look much younger than that. Sorry. And on the back of that, I started studying under a guy called Paul Check, who is a slightly alternative but also incredibly knowledgeable health guru and strength coach. And then I went into metabolic typing, which is essentially a way of assessing your metabolism specifically for nutritional needs. And I studied under a whole bunch of different kind of slightly maverick therapists, nutritionists, doctors, to get to the point where today, since I gave up professional climbing when I was 26, I've been working in the health field as a health coach and running a number of health companies in the UK. There you go, in a nutshell. But that's only one version of the truth, obviously. There are lots of other versions of it.
Right. So with your own story and your self-discovery of like trying different diets, what would you recommend to other people as far as don't just listen to what is the next fad diet or whatever, but how would you recommend people start experimenting with their own health to find what's best for them?
So so let's reverse a bit in time. I'll give you an idea of the degree of experimentation. And I said to you guys, ladies, earlier, I take Blake, the English poet, Blake's approach, that the only true knowledge is the one where you experience it yourself. And so for me, it's one thing to read a book and then look at all the data, but unless I'm experiencing it for myself, it doesn't really hold any validity. Hence why I have been a vegan, I've been a strict vegetarian, I've eaten raw for the best part of a year. I've been a fruitarian, that lasted for 3 months. Luckily, when I lived in Australia.
I did that for like 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. I would suggest 2 hours is about enough nowadays.
It was tasty.
I did the zone diet, which had a hugely positive effect on my health, but based on where I was coming from to do the zone diet, and that was from raw over into the zone. I've been a strict paleo for a long time. Did that for a couple of years. I've also tried the Pritikin diet, which is the high carb diet. It's like 90% carbs from memory.
I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah.
That wasn't very publicized.
No, well, it was actually in the
Oh,
80s.
was?
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
in the
huge,
80s,
absolutely huge. But these paradigms shift and constantly shift.
Yes.
And so I would like to say that now, at the sort of wise old age of 40, that I've come to a more balanced approach, but that's not true. Like now I'm experimenting, and have been for the last year, hugely experimenting with the work of a guy called Dr. Ray Peat, Raypeat. If you go to raypeat.com. Ray Peat is a professor of endocrinology and has a specific interest in nutritional approach to interactions with our environment. If you think about it, the number one interaction that we have day to day with our environment is eating it. We eat our environment. So that's going to have a huge impact on what we call our health. It's going to have a huge impact on everything. And Ray Peat is arguably one of the most controversial doctors out there, in that pretty much everything that is deemed to be the kind of current paradigm of what is healthy and what will get you to live an extra 20 years or whatever, be an athlete, etc. He turns it completely on top of his head, with the hugest, most thorough amount of references that I've ever seen in my life. And I mean, I try and cross-check a lot. A lot of the references are tricky to actually find, or not find the references, but to actually cross-check them. And everything holds up. And so the last year, my diet is pretty odd in that I don't eat any green vegetables at all. Don't touch greens. And you can ask me why on all of these things as we go along. I don't touch any nuts or seeds. I don't touch any fish oils. I don't eat any oily fish.
Guess I'm supposed to ask you about the fish oils.
Yeah, I avoid them like the plague. And by the way, when I say I've got a 3-year-old boy who has never really been sick, and he's had 2 years of eating this way because I started experimenting with him early on. And he's so robust and so healthy and so linguistically advanced. But I eat a lot of sugar, huge amounts of sugar. I drink 2 Coca-Colas a day, just to make sure I get enough sucrose into my body. And I eat a huge amount of fruit. And then the proteins,
My mind's like turning into puzzle right now.
Yeah, well, look, rather than me like completely lay out this, you've obviously got questions about all of it.
Yes.
But I also eat a lot of dairy, and for somebody who didn't eat dairy for nearly 12 years, I eat a huge amount of grass-fed organic dairy,
Okay.
especially ice cream. My son gets to eat ice cream every night, as long as it doesn't have any gums in it.
And like not even guar gum, xanthan gum.
No. All of the gums have been shown to have a pro-inflammatory effect in the gut. Not only that, carrageenan, which is over here, has been deemed to be acceptable in huge amounts. You know, it's banned in Europe. So 600 million people in Europe agree that it's not good for you.
Yeah.
But the other 300 million people over here agree that it's because it's in organic health foods.
It's in Whole Foods.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I looked in the fridge recently. My wife usually buys organic raw milk from the Amish community that gets it delivered over here.
Oh.
But we'd run out. She went to buy this super expensive organic whole milk from Whole Foods, and it's got carrageenan in it, which is carrageenan. There's the evidence to show that this food additive that is in everything over here, absolutely precancerous.
So what are the? I'm very curious about this on a personal level as well, because I'm in a coaching program right now called the Institute for the Psychology of Eating.
Right.
So taking the the other half of the equation of like not what to eat, but like who are you as an eater? And clients he works with, that women who've been depriving themselves of sugar, they're super stressed, like he'll shift their diet to things that will bring them relaxation, will bring them pleasure, because we're meant to receive pleasure from our food, and it's like that alone shifts what is like happening for them. So with your approach, like what differences have you seen in your body or energy?
Yeah, and by the way, I've used this approach a lot with clients, especially clients who. So I've just come to the end of a coaching term period with a lady in Texas who has for nearly 20 years had crippling arthritis, and it's got to the point 6 months ago where she had to sleep 16 hours per day and night, and she would have cold sweats. And she's a single mother with an 8-year-old daughter, and the only way she could relieve it was by doing lots of aerobic activity. So she was running for an hour and a half a day, because that was the only time when she wasn't in pain. Well, that's obvious, isn't it? Because when you run for that period of time, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, adrenaline, these are painkillers, and they have an ongoing effect for a couple of hours afterwards. So I've been utilising it with a lot of people, also in fertility. I've got a couple of friends who have completely dived in headfirst into this Peat approach. And by Peat, so the whole purpose of it is to raise metabolic rate. So there's this idea, and I think, and forgive me if I've got the dates and times wrong, but there was a medical doctor, I think he was British, called Raymond Pearl. I think it was in the 1950s, who wanted to look at what the optimum human being was and what health really meant. And so he started to study what is a pretty obvious thing to do, really. He studied athletes, and he looked at athletes across the board, because the assumption is if they can run faster, and they can jump higher, and they can lift heavier, then they're healthier than us. But health and physical prowess are not necessarily, they don't go hand in hand. You know this from you probably see a lot of people in CrossFit who are not necessarily healthy, even though they're capable of doing certain feats. So Pearl came up with the conclusion, looking across the board of all these athletes, that a low heart rate was a sign of health, because they all had low heart rates. Low body fat was a sign of health, because they all had low body fat. And low body temperature was a sign of health. But in doing so, and obviously sometimes these ideas take root, and this one certainly did take root, and you can reinforce it by looking at more and more healthy athletes, and probably every dude on the front cover of Men's Health with a six-pack who starves himself of anything remotely like food probably has a low heart rate. Yeah, considered healthy, right?
Yeah.
And has a low heart rate and has low metabolic function. But what they're not telling you is that they're not sleeping properly, or they get anxious, and they feel uncomfortable in their skin a lot, and they have skin rashes, and they have all these. And I've worked with a lot of professional athletes over the years, so I know the whole range of things that come along with. Most athletes, most Olympic athletes, are, by the time that they've finished in their events, they're completely adrenaline fatigued. They're wiped out. So that to me is not a sign of health. Back into the 50s, Raymond Pearl, I mean, this idea took root, but what he avoided looking at was really the long-lived people and the people who didn't have symptoms of illness. They weren't athletes, but they were regular, everyday people in a lot of cases, but they had high metabolic rates, meaning that their heart rates were higher, meaning that their body heat was higher, their core temperature, and meaning that they actually had some body fat on them, but not excessive, because their metabolism is actually able to utilise fat. Now, if you look at babies, and babies tend, before we start injecting them and giving them pills and doing everything we can to prepare them for this world that humans have been managing to live through for many hundreds of thousands of years, babies are pretty healthy. Right? They come into the world relatively healthy. In fact, they may actually be the healthiest that humans ever are. Yeah, and there are certain conditions that they have a really high heart rate. They also have a hugher body temperature. They're podgy little things, right? They have a bit of body fat on them. They also have, interestingly, which we should get onto and approach because it's a hugely important thing to look at nowadays, is that they also have sterile guts. They have very little bacteria in their guts. Whereas now, of course, we're being told that we should be populating our gut with huge amounts of bacteria for the microbiome work that's going on. Certainly with the Hadza, who are a tribe in Tanzania, who have this vast range of gut bacteria. And they have very few illnesses compared to a lot of other tribes, but there's a whole load of factors. I think the biggest problem we have, I know that the purpose of this is to talk about the issue in the kind of medical world. We also have issues in the alternative world, and by alternative, talking about the one that isn't a pharmaceutical approach.
Right.
A lot of those issues is that we oversimplify. In my opinion, and there's and the brighter people, way brighter people than me, who are proposing this or claiming it. It's not hard to be brighter than me. In my opinion, we are hugely oversimplifying in that we hope that this pill or this study on the microbiome, people's gut health in Tanzania or in the Yaqui Indians in Venezuela, will prove to us that if we just do this, all of our allergies will disappear, and all of our cancer will disappear, and that's just, life's way more complex than that. The living organism is hugely complex. I mean, we haven't even talked about the psychology.
I still need to know about the spinach, the sugar, this.
Okay, shall I make it relatively compact then? So think about. Think about.
What's possible for you?
Well, by the way, I am compacting this stuff.
Okay,
because
I
reality is,
And I get what you're saying about the oversimplifying in the alternative world. That in a sense, one claim can be no different than saying, "Oh, you should get this vaccine."
Absolutely.
Saying, "Oh, you should take omegas," or "You should increase your gut bacteria." It still can be like, well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's all relative and complex.
And also, bear in mind that my grandfather died when he was 75 years old. He smoked 60 cigarettes a day. Never ate green vegetables because he didn't like them. He ate meat and potatoes, and he sat 30 years sedentary on a bus driving for the best part of his life.
Wow.
And did no exercise ever in his life. Had a relatively stressful life because he was married to my grandmother, which was stressed anyway, living the Pope. And literally grew up in a toxic environment before the Second World War. And he managed to live to 75. Now, he was actually a really happy, content guy until about a week before he died. Take away the cigarettes, he maybe would have got another 5 or 10 years out of his life. But we see people keeling over, marathon runners, who are on salad diets or paleo diets, and I'm not hitting any one of those diets as being sort of the root of all evil. We've got little old ladies proving in France. There's a lady there who's 115 years old. She smoked a couple of cigarettes every day of her life. She drinks espresso in the morning, which actually I think is one of the most beneficial things that any human can do. And I mean that from a medical or from a scientific approach, health approach, not just the fact that I love espresso. But she eats a baguette every day. She cycles down to the shop and has a baguette. The Okinawa experiment, which looked at the long-lived, I think they were mostly centenarians from Okinawa, showed that when you took these people out of their communities, so everyone was looking at their diet and like they're eating, they're eating fish and they're eating rice and they have these relatively simple diets, that must be it. But then when they actually looked at them eating the same diet but in a different country, because a lot of Okinawans came to America, they were dying 20 years younger. And the reason that they put it down to, and I think anytime you pinpoint it to one reason, it's dangerous, but it serves to prove a certain point. The reason they put it down to was because those people didn't have the same degree of community or respect. Now, respect isn't something you can quantify and give to somebody in a pill.
Right.
But it may well be that some of those emotional responses...
Well, that's, it reminded me of like the blue zones as well. So there's research on what's called blue zones, and it's the areas in the world where people live the longest. So these areas have been researched and studies, and not only what is it about their diet, but what is it about their lifestyle. And one thing with the blue zones is actually that you live in a radius where you can walk everywhere.
Nice.
And
Very
there's,
nice.
yeah. And no matter if you live in the city or if you live in, a rural area. Another thing was community, and literally like the amount of faces you interact with, like face to face every day, just neighbors.
Yep.
And how that increases
That makes
health,
absolute
vitality.
sense. Blue zones, I will look at that as soon as we finish here.
Yeah.
Because I know there will be people going, hold on, he drinks Coke, what, sugar?
Yeah,
What about the
let's
vegetables?
let's
So
talk
let,
about the
so let me give you a
Coca-Cola.
brief overview. By the way, nothing I'm saying exists outside of a whole bunch of research. And I can give you all of the references afterwards if you want to post them below the video. It's not just this weird
It's
Englishman
definitely interesting.
spouting garbage out of his backside, although it may turn out to be that one day. So the reason I don't eat greens basically is they're boring, right? They don't taste that good. We load them in oils
Dress them up.
and things to make them taste better. Otherwise, why dress them? But that's not the reason I don't eat them. If you think about any living organism on planet Earth, through its evolutionary process, it has to find ways of not going into extinction. Otherwise, it wouldn't be here. Right? So everything has to survive, even leaves on a tree. Hence why leaves on a tree most have a lot of bitter alkaloids in them. Leaves on the ground, your rucola or your overpriced lamb lettuce or whatever it is, it has certain plant toxins in it that are designed to put off mammalian herbivores. Because otherwise it would be eaten into extinction. There's a reason that there's a bitterness in a lot of these plants, and it's because it's exhibiting a certain degree of plant toxins. Now, anecdotally, and I've never seen this, so because I'm not a zoologist, there are studies that show that herbivores will eat a certain plant for a certain period of time, and then they'll move on. Goats might be the exception to that, because they'll just eat anything until it's annihilated. So plant toxins exist in above ground vegetables to put off herbivores. Not that we're herbivores or omnivores, clearly, but I doubt very much that when there was, let's say, for instance, if we buy into the idea that we all evolved in the African Rift, I doubt that when the three of us are walking around feeling a bit peckish, low blood sugar, right? Peckish.
Okay.
And there's a whole bunch of fruit hanging off the trees. Red and green and yellow and orange and juicy and full of fruit and full of minerals, and it has zero plant toxins in it. Because the tree wants us to eat it, so that we eat it, and then we poop out the seeds later and regerminate it. So the fruit is literally designed to be eaten by mammals. We're walking through the African Rift. Now, there's a whole patch of rucola and dandelion and lamb's lettuce or whatever, and it would have tasted a lot bitter back then, a lot more bitter. And there's a whole bunch of fruit on the side, on the left. What are we going to eat? These greens have traditionally been peasant foods. I read somewhere recently that somebody went to, I think it was a nutritionist, went to, wasn't Nigeria, it was one of the African countries that's now becoming more evolved, and they couldn't find a salad on a menu anywhere. And after the third day, when they said to the guy, there's no salads on the menus, he said, yeah, we're wealthy enough that we don't have to eat that shit anymore.
I love that.
Which, again, is an anecdotal version.
Yeah.
So the vegetables that I do eat a lot of, I eat a lot of below ground vegetables, root vegetables. And the reason being is that traditionally, above ground herbivores, you don't see deer, for instance, digging to dig up carrots. They don't eat them because it's, they go for the low hanging fruit, metaphorically. So root vegetables have evolved over time to basically put off attacks from molds, funguses,
Okay.
and from bacterial and from other small parasitic infections. So by eating those foods, they actually impart to some degree some of their sort of antibiotic, antifungal effects. So I have a raw carrot every single day. Without fail, it's like my daily medicine. I do a little raw carrot salad, partly because it soaks up endotoxin, which is the bacterial byproduct in the gut, which causes a whole host of problems in the organism.
Do you shave off the outside of the carrot?
No, I don't. I give it a wash though, because I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not a huge. I used to give my son carrots with lots of dirt on them from organic soil, in the hope of getting the dirt in.
Right.
Now I'm experimenting the other way, which is trying to sterilise the gut. And in fact, I just started taking antibiotics for I have no infection going on, just to see if I can sterilise my gut and see what the effects are.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I've just started taking and I don't advise this, by the way. This is not to be advised. This is personal experimentation.
Personal
Personal
I am
experiment.
an experimenter. And so I've just started, literally the last couple of days, I think, third day today, I'm taking some flagyl. I'm taking 1,000 milligrams of flagyl a day. And then I'm going to move over onto another antibiotic. And a couple of weeks ago, I was taking something called ivermectin, which is this well-known anti-parasite. Because I go to a lot of kind of
Countries.
dirty places. I've lived in Haiti, and I got parasites in Haiti. As most of my colleagues did, and I've lived in the Amazon. I'm on this sterilisation thing, and I'll see what the results are. If it doesn't work for me.
So your vegetables consist of 1 carrot a day? Or
No, so my wife's a nutritionist,
Yes.
and
She
she's
does
also a
muscle
chef.
testing? Is that
She
what
does autonomic response testing, which is different to muscle
Okay.
testing. So it uses, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't understand it, because I haven't paid much attention to it, except to know that it's incredibly accurate.
Okay.
Because
Maybe get to have her on.
Yeah, definitely. You ought to, but because I've tested it against lab tests, and so I've even been to the Tropical Medicine Clinic in London, which is arguably the best tropical medicine clinic in the world, and I got them to do a whole range of tests on me after having come back from a trip to Haiti and Brazil, and they came up with all these parasites, and the autonomic response testing found it as well, and my wife had no idea that because I was keeping that back. I wanted to compare it. So it's a really accurate process that uses muscle testing exactly, and some other stuff that
Cool.
I don't know enough of.
Yeah.
What about it?
Okay, so veggies and
Sugar.
So sugar.
Sugar's the big one, right?
Yeah.
Sugar.
So I went 20 years of my life not drinking Coke. I gave up when I was 16.
Yeah. Well, the corn syrup too.
Well, no, because I drink Mexican
Real
Coke.
Coca-Cola.
I
Don't drink corn syrup. I
Okay.
don't drink high fructose corn syrup.
Okay.
Although,
Because that's a major stomach problem for me.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at a study a few months ago that compared the difference between high fructose corn syrup and regular sucrose. So sucrose is 50% fructose and 50% glucose. It's a disaccharide. High fructose corn syrup, I think I'm right in saying, is 55% glucose and 45% fructose. So it's not actually that dissimilar. And that 5% difference, arguably, I mean, when I looked at the research, it doesn't seem to make that much of a real difference in the effect. There may be people who are experts in saccharides.
It's like chemical.
But it's chemical, and that's my issue with it.
Yeah.
And it's one of my issues with even drinking Coke, is I suspect that there is maybe some of the sugar is GMO. Coke doesn't provide non-GMO sugar, as far as I know. They're going to go for the cheapest source that they can. So it's something, and it's something I haven't looked into, and I want to look into. But the reason I drink Coca-Cola is because all of our cells need glucose. It gets used in the process of creating energy.
Okay.
Turns into pyruvate and ultimately into ATP to get the muscles to get us moving, right? To be conscious. But if you think about it, there's a field of thought that all structure, meaning the physical organism, requires energy to run through it to be alive. Structure, energy, and structure, they're not interdependent. They're dependent upon each other. Any cells that are dead, the body ultimately disposes of. Any cells that are alive, they are alive because they have energy running through them. The main source of energy in cellular energy is glucose. Now, there are issues, obviously, with glucose and diabetes, as there are issues with weight gain and various other factors. But fructose, in most of the studies, has been shown to actually dent the insulin response with glucose. So I would never. So, and by the way, starch, which if you look at the American Dietetic Association, they recommend, I think still, that weird pyramid that came out like 5,000 years ago, they recommend that you have a starch-based diet, whole grains, right?
Right.
And legumes and things like that, which have huge amounts of phytates, which are anti-thyroid, which, I mean, I haven't eaten a bean in, I can't remember. Ironically, I'm married to a woman who's called Bean, but I've never eaten the starch breaks down into glucose with no fructose, and fructose has a whole range of protective qualities. So I noticed when I started taking in what some people might say is a huge amount of sugar. So in my coffee every morning, I'll have like 5 or 6 tablespoons.
Is it like cane sugar?
It's
agave?
well, yeah. No, it's not agave. Agave is a nasty food.
Honey.
What about maple syrup?
Honey's amazing, and maple syrup is amazing. So my son has milk with maple syrup in it.
Okay.
I just use regular non-GMO table sugar or raw cane sugar in my coffee, and then I squeeze about 10 oranges every morning, and to get the fructose, and then I put gelatin in, which is a form of protein that comes from the sinew and connective tissues of animals.
Into like your OJ?
Put it into my OJ. I have the hydrolyzed version, which mixes easy, and so that just about gives me the amount of sugar that I want in the morning. And then throughout the day, the reason I drink Coke, I like the taste of it, Mexican Coke in a glass bottle, but it's purely because it's difficult for me to get enough sugar, sucrose, into my body, and I want a lot of sucrose. I want to be metabolically active. I started losing weight. I had a year off of doing any exercise because I had some injuries that I was trying to just restore from, and I was like, I've gone all my life killing it with exercise. I'm just going to take a rest.
Yeah.
So I took a year off, and I started putting weight on. Metabolism slowed down, and rather foolishly, I sort of went on to a what I thought, if I'm going to not do exercise, I need to go on a lowish calorie diet, more high protein, but greens and all that sort of stuff. And I put weight on. My metabolism shut down. Within about 2 months of eating huge amounts of sugar, my metabolism ramped up again. I felt energized. I felt alive. My injuries by that time had restored, and now, I find it very easy to stay at a normal body. I don't go to
What about like diabetes and sugar?
Well, so the diabetes thing, in earlier studies, they showed that when you added fructose to the diet of diabetes, they lost less glucose. So one of the conditions, and I'm not a doctor, so nothing I'm saying should be taken as a...
Don't listen to this video.
Don't listen to this video from a medical point of view. This is purely informational. Yes. And I actually have a very layman's knowledge when it comes to diabetes. I don't have any experience with it myself.
But it's a huge rampant problem in America.
Huge. There's a whole bunch of studies that show that you can induce diabetes into animals without giving them glucose. You can induce diabetes by giving them the alleged essential oils, fats, the omega-3 and 6 and 9 oils, which, by the way, are one of the worst foods that you can possibly eat. They destabilize. So there's a brilliant study where they take a bunch of rats and they give them from the same species, same breeding group. They give one group of rats for a number of months high polyunsaturated fatty oil diet, the other one 0. They exactly the same thing except for the addition, and then they give them hypothermic shock treatment. The rats that have been given a high polyunsaturated fatty oil diet, they die in like the early stages. The rats that have had none, you almost can't kill them. You put them on ice, and they just bounce back because their cells are so robust. Because the polyunsaturated, the problem is that these fats are unstable. By the way, anyone who wants to really go into this, go to the Ray Peat website, where he's got these hugely informative articles. But there was a doctor called Broder Barnes who was a specialist in thyroid health. This research came out in the 50s. It was only when the seed oil companies decided, instead of using this stuff in paint, which is what seed oils were used for back then, we could be feeding it to human beings. And so they brought on a whole bunch of scientists who were able to show, and I think that I'm right in saying it was a guy called another English guy, these bloody Brits, called Burr, who showed that rats fed an omega-3 and 6 free diet developed a whole range of conditions. But within the same year, I think it was, all of his peers disproved the experiments by showing that it wasn't the omega-3s that were missing, it was one of the B vitamins. It might have been B3 niacinamide, something like that. And so by keeping them on a PUFA-free, polyunsaturated fatty acid diet, and only giving them this extra B vitamin, all of their conditions cleared up. But of course, if you're a huge industry with gazillions of dollars ready to promote, you'll take that piece of information. And then the pharmaceutical industry jumps on it. And then the whole cholesterol issue comes up where there's the claims that high saturated fat diets cause heart attack because of cholesterol and the clogging of the arteries, which has been categorically disproven so across the board. There's a guy called, and I hesitate to pronounce his name because I'll probably do it wrong, but it's Uf Ramansboff, I think it is. But if you look for a book called The Cholesterol Myth, and there's another one, I think it's 39 billion reasons to not eat saturated fat, $39 billion being the amount of money I think every year that statins make. You'll see categorically how the information is just fraudulent. The saturated fats that we have evolved on for long periods of time are protected.
Yeah.
Crisco.
So, but that's like hydrolyzed, like.
Is that the spray stuff?
It's like margarine.
I've never even
almost.
seen it.
Or like fake butter.
It used
or
to
not.
be like what
It's like-
everyone cooks with,
Yeah,
like lard.
lard, basically lard. So that's okay. My question is.
It's a shift in a paradigm, by the way.
It is a shift with.
So I came from a background where I also did strength and sports coach. I worked with a lot of athletes, and for a number of years, I gave my clients huge amounts of fish oils because there's a whole bunch of research that shows that the omega-3s, well, not even that it creates an anabolic effect. A bit like a lot of the paleo diets create an anabolic effect. From my understanding of it, the anabolic effect comes from the moment you go into essentially not eating enough glucose, not eating enough fruits, not eating enough sugar, you start going into a catabolic effect to some degree where your body starts having to break down and it starts increasing its glucocorticoids such as cortisol to draw the nutrients from the muscles. But this creates a stress response, and in that stress response you start creating steroidal hormones. So if we take the average person in the street tomorrow and we cut all sugar out of their diet, and we take them to CrossFit and we get them training their backside off, or a similar, intense regime, they will be exhausted, but they will also start feeling amazing, and also looking amazing, and feeling youthful, and feeling incredible, because their body, in the stress response, is creating steroidal hormones. But it's not creating it because this is a picture of health. It's creating it because it's like
a stress response.
I'm in a stress response. I need to get you out of this. I need to make you fitter, stronger, more alert. But how long can the body go on doing that?
Yeah.
Because as we know, it's stress. Stress, by the way, I encourage anyone to read Hans Selye's books on stress. I think he was the first doctor that ever came up with the idea of stress, 1950s. His work is incredible on the adrenals. And, he was a huge advocate of limiting stress. Stress is important to some degrees. It makes us stronger. Gives us experience. But he's a huge advocate of just limiting
out of a literal fight or flight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Emergency would.
Yeah, absolutely. We need it in our lives.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, I'm not going to give up rock climbing, which is a stress. I was surfing this morning and I got hammered. Rolled and rolled and rolled by some waves. And when I came up, the smile on my face makes me feel alive. My adrenals are pumping out. I know there's Coke in the car when I get back to it. And the sugar's going to lower the cortisol effect.
Right.
And I also had a pint of milk before I went.
Yeah.
The sugar.
And that's, in the paleo diet has been, been so huge in like the CrossFit world, but you also look at some of the top CrossFitters and like they eat donuts every day,
course
and like
do.
it's part of their recovery that they
French fries
need
for
the sugar.
marathons.
And like growing up, doing gymnastics, like we would have 4-hour practices, and in our break time, the only thing I wanted was like a Three Musketeers from the vending machine, and I was fine.
I would encourage you though to, in those moments, is to look at if you were eating a lot more fructose. So fruit is arguably the best way to get sugar in. I have a really busy schedule, and I'm working all day. So for me to go and juice loads of oranges, and I don't buy commercial orange juice because they put too much fibre in it. So they blend it so they don't have to pay for the fibre to be disposed of. And I don't want the fibre. I don't eat any. I try and limit fibre in my diet hugely because I don't want the endotoxin release. I want everything to absorb in the upper intestinal tract, so that there's very little to be dealt with by my colon. And there's a whole bunch of research that I'll send you the
But a lot of
papers.
fruit itself does have a lot of fiber, doesn't it?
Well, it doesn't really. It's mostly water. And then it does have fibre. Absolutely, it has more fibre than a Coke.
That's my whole thing against juicing is that you're getting rid of all those nutrients.
Well, you might be getting rid of certain nutrients and certain fibre. And by the way, when you juice any fruit, obviously you create something that. So I put, as I said, I put gelatin with my orange juice. The addition of protein when drinking something like orange juice, which has, by the way, has the same. I think it's an identical glycemic index rating as Coca-Cola. The two are similar. But I put protein in because it shows that it does dent the insulin response.
Okay.
So it does lower it.
Yeah.
The fibre in it also, I think I'm right in saying, has a similar effect of lowering it, but only by a certain degree. I mean, if you think about it, historically, we're walking through the African Rift still. We've avoided all that green stuff over there because we're hungry. And it's summertime, right? Because the fruit's on the trees. Now, if we're in a seasonal habitat, summertime's only going to last for a period of time, and the fruits are only going to be on the trees for a period of time. So we're going to eat as much of it as possible and try and store it as well. Where are we going to store it? We're going to store it as body fat to some degree. Now, I think anyone could overeat on sugar and put a load of body fat on because that is a mechanism that is in us. So, I don't eat so much that I all of a sudden wake up one morning and go, oh God, I've now got an extra roll on me. But I do eat enough. I eat more than my body needs to be able to deal with my daily activities and the stress of life.
And do you experience, or is your body used to it, do you experience like an insulin spike and a drop, or you're saying some of the mechanisms you have help like,
This will be the longest period so far that I've gone without having a sip of something with some sugar, maybe some, coconut oil, maybe some gelatin.
Today, because we're here.
So when I work standing up at my desk, and I've always got some. I can live with it. I don't think I'm going to go into ketosis just yet.
Yeah, that was my other question because you were saying that like you still have saturated fats, right?
Yeah, I eat saturated fats. Yeah.
But as opposed to, because we're talking about like the bulletproof diet, which is all about you're either in ketosis or your body's either running off of fats or sugar. So when you're incorporating the fats, but you don't ever want your body to be in ketosis.
I definitely don't want to go into ketosis. I mean, I've done on a high protein. I did a 90% protein diet for about 6 months. Looked and felt amazing for a period of time. Bad breath, because of the ketones. Got fitter, faster, stronger, and then went crashed big time.
What was the time?
Big time. Well, I did it for about 6 months, but I probably cheated a bit here and there because I don't see. By the way, the cheating thing is an important point. People have sugar cravings, not because they are undisciplined or because they have molds craving in their body or any of that stuff. It's because they need sugar. Like, listen to your body.
And we want sugar like one period a month, for sure.
You want what? Oh yeah,
like
of course you do.
month.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, but that's because I think I'm right in saying that the excess estrogen in the system. So if you think about it, hormones require sugar, they require saturated fat to be made. And if your body's not pumping out maybe enough progesterone, and we live in an estrogenic environment nowadays, I think I'm right in saying is that the excess sugar that you crave is a hormonal response, not because you're mad, but because your biology requires it to keep equilibrium and balance. This, for me, is madness that people avoid. So yesterday, at 3 in the afternoon, hugely busy schedule, dealing with editors on my new book and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I feel a bit tired. So I have sleep, right? I have like a 25, 30 minute sleep. Now, I'm not like the French, and I have a nap every day.
Yeah.
But when my body demands it, and there are times when I'm like, I don't want any sugar right now. You know, I'll go and have some bone. My wife keeps bone broth in the fridge constantly. I'll go and have something salty and bone broth. I eat huge amounts of salt as well, like huge amounts of salt. I swallowed quite a lot this morning when surfing as well. But listen to your body. There is an intuitive wisdom.
Yes.
I would add, however, that we bring up our children nowadays to little Johnny goes, Daddy, I need a wee. Wait. Daddy, I'm hungry. Wait an hour for lunch. Daddy, I'm not tired. Go to bed. Daddy, I don't want to do this. I'm bored. Do it. What we're second guessing constantly, or we're imposing, in fact. So the child second guesses its own connection to its intuition. You know, its unconscious processing. This is insane. It's totally insane. Like, my little boy, he's like, Daddy, I want ice cream. I'm like, we're having dinner in a minute, mate. He's like, yeah, but I want ice cream.
Okay.
Okay, so really quick, walk us through like a day of eating.
Oh, day of eating. Well, I can walk you through what I've eaten this morning.
Okay.
So I got up at 6:30, so I could go for a surf at 7. And I came downstairs. I had some cold brew coffee that I put out the night before.
Okay.
So coffee, by the way, is one of the most healthful foods that you can possibly drink. It has neuroprotective qualities, and it's the caffeine. There are other things in the coffee as well, but caffeine. So caffeine, interestingly, is used in a number of countries as a test for liver function. So if you are somebody who can't tolerate caffeine, it usually shows that you have poor liver function. And if you are somebody who the half-life of coffee carries on running in the system, it's because you're not capable of utilising its ability to increase metabolic rate. Coffee increases metabolic rates. The problem is that if you drink coffee in the morning on an empty stomach and you've not got enough fuel in the tank, it's like pressing the accelerator to the floor in a Ferrari, and then you're just running on fumes. That's what most people do in the gym at 6 a.m. when they have their espresso and they go and train. Again, they start going into a stress response, and you feel great from it, but it's going to catch up for you.
Or your stomach might feel nauseous.
Yeah, absolutely. Your stomach. Well, it's a whole range of symptoms, right?
Yeah.
These symptoms that we, in the medical world, I'm not in the medical world, but in the medical world, they try and go, well, it's this because it's just your liver, or it's just this because it's your brain, or it's just this because it's in your gut, or it's just this because it's in your little toe. The last time I checked, they're all connected. Right? The whole thing, and it's just in your mind. Well, what mind-body split? There is no mind-body split. When did you last have a thought that didn't have a correlating response in your body? When did you last have a sensation in your body that didn't have a correlating thought? There is this, obviously there's this distinction that we have between the two forms of, and I use the term logic, which is a conscious mind. We're aware of what's going on here and now. But right now you're not aware of your left little toe. But you are now, right? But you weren't before. But it was still there. You're not aware of how your body is currently dealing with a million different processes. They're all unconscious.
Yeah.
But we assume that because it's unconscious to us that it doesn't exist or it doesn't have some effect in our lives. And that's the big show. That's everything is we consciously we only capture 5 or 7 bits of information.
Right.
So
you'll have your cold brew not on an empty stomach, though?
No, I don't. No, so this morning I drank a pint of milk and I put some maple syrup in it to get the extra sugar. I took some pregnenolone, which is essentially a hormone precursor, or is a hormone. I take that I take 300 milligrams a week, so I took 100 milligrams this morning. And then I had a Sharon fruit.
What's that?
It's a tropical fruit. Tastes delicious. Tastes like toffee. They're incredible. Had a Sharon fruit, handful of blueberries, had my milk. I put some gelatin in the milk as well. And then I had a coffee that I took with me. And the coffee had 6 tablespoons of sugar in it. When I got out, I had a Coke waiting. I drank half the Coke. That's all I felt like having. When I got in, at home I had a bowl of mince that my wife would, like this chili she'd made last night, this huge amount of gelatin in it. If I eat red meat, I eat extra gelatin. Because red meat, and I know the World Health Organization came out last week with this claim stating that red meat does cause cancer. And there's been lots of people saying that for a long time. But you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that all red meat. First of all, some red meat is grown in a factory.
Really raw, where it still has the enzymes.
Yeah, it's that, but I think there's also the fact that a lot of red meat increases serotonin in the gut, and serotonin is a precursor to a whole range of problems. It also causes lactic acid, and lactic acid is, and this is something to bear in mind if you're a CrossFit trainer, lactic acid is a pro-inflammatory marker. Like the more lactic acid you have, the more likely you are to have the pro-inflammatory diseases. Yeah, absolutely. And certain foods increase. This is one of the problems with fermented foods. Nowadays it's like sauerkraut and kimchi and lots of bacteria. They all cause lactic acid. Lactic acid. The less lactic acid we have in our body, the better. This is the reason I gave up long distance running, because of the amount of lactic acid.
Yeah, I was going to see if you're into that stuff anymore too.
No, I'm not. I haven't run now in a number of years. I do some sprints once in a while, usually if someone's chasing me. So I had the mince. I put a lot of cheese on it, eat a lot of dairy, mostly raw, organic, always organic. Always check there's no carrageenan or any of the other gums in it. And then I had another coffee or sugar, and then I came here. So
did you get most of your food from like local farms, or?
Yes, my wife is a member of an Amish delivery system.
Okay.
It's incredible. They don't do email because they're Amish, right? And so she has to phone somebody up who isn't Amish, who speaks to her on the phone, and then deals with these people. And the quality of the foods that we get are incredible.
Amish delivery?
Yeah. So she picks up, and I think they're not in California, but it gets delivered into California. And we get these incredible eggs, and we get these, and they're so free range. They're like they probably can't even catch them. Yeah. The food is it's exceptional. I'm lucky enough that with all my workload, my wife, her main focus is the nutrition and health and wellness of her family. Yeah. So I don't have to be on the phone dealing with the Amish.
The Amish.
All right. Well, that was super informative. Isn't he fascinating? Yeah.
I made it all up. I actually.
So interesting.
I'm an Uber driver, and I got lost. And,
Make it up on the spot.
So what are the burning questions? Come on, what are the burning questions?
I think that...
We covered enough for now? I haven't even started,
I think we need like 10 more episodes.
Okay. So I want to know what I think is interesting, and for people watching too, what are like 3 things that you would tell someone watching this that might be like overwhelmed with the information?
Yeah.
3 things of like... Oops. What you would first recommend to start to take their health into their own hands? Or 3 things they could start with?
So, obviously, I'm not very good at accepting limiting frames.
Okay.
I will do my best to do so because it's you.
Have.
Right.
The river runs free because of the banks.
Indeed. What banks? If there's enough water in the river, then the banks are irrelevant, right? Because it just keeps on flowing. However, so I would want to clarify or specify more so from the perspective of your potential or your audiences, because I could offer 3 ideas in health in regards to nutrition. I could offer 3 ideas in regards to fitness. I could offer 3. To do that is very difficult, because I actually think the most important thing that any human being can do, and this is probably proven by the 115-year-old lady in France riding her bicycle, eating baguettes with a cigarette in her mouth, going on to get her espresso, is the internal response to our environments, meaning the states that we create, meaning our emotional response is the most important thing.
Our own internal joy.
Yeah, well, not even joy. I mean, I go plenty of days where there's no joy, right? But I never go a day where there is an overflow or an excess of what we might call negative emotions. Now, I don't want to be like the Stepford Wives and devoid of any ability to be angry or sad or grieve. I lost a close friend recently, and I grieved, and I made sure that I grieved correctly, fully, not correctly, but fully. I don't want to be devoid of all those, but I do want to have the choice over them. Because when my little boy comes home from school at 4 in the evening, I don't want to be moping around or stressed or dealing with some shit that I should have left it at the office, or dealing with what one of my clients has brought into the session.
Right.
So I think the number one thing that people can do for their health is to learn how to choose the way that they respond to the world. And by respond, I mean not react.
Right.
All of a sudden, a loud bang goes off out there, there's a gas leak or the place blows up. You'll see in the 20 people that run out to it, there'll be 20 different reactions, but probably 19 reactions will be like this group hypnosis of, we must panic.
Yeah.
Ah! And you might see one person, the Zen master who just happened to be walking by, who is just like completely calm, it doesn't break through, and he's going to be the one who can actually come up with a solution. Right, should we get in there and get people, whatever. Right.
Well, even like the Tesla, they just came out where it will drive for you. So there's all these YouTube videos out there, and it's interesting to watch the different reactions of people being completely taken out of their norm with letting this car drive, there's a car coming here, or I need to grab it. Just all the different responses.
See, I have a visceral, as you're saying it, I saw myself in the car and I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
Not for me, because I like to have some choice over what I do. However, I fly a lot, and I have no choice over what's going to happen in the air.
True.
Yeah.
So that would be my number one thing. And then I think we have to avoid, like the plague, or rather like the snake oil, this idea that we can fix our health, and that our health is this linear cause-effect. Here, take this pill, or do this thing, or buy into this paradigm, and that it will fix your health. Your health is a consequence. We're all living states, right? We're living states with consciousness in us. And those, the complexity of our living states, I mean, yeah, we require some sunshine, we require some fresh air, we require some, as we talked about, maybe some respect, some interaction. Maybe we even require French sticks if we're brought up to believe that we require French sticks.
What are French sticks?
Baguettes. Sorry,
those?
baguettes. French breads. French
It's like
breads.
French
Oh yeah,
fries.
I'll communicate with you
Bread
in the local language. No, baguettes, long thin white bread.
Yeah, like a French baguette.
Yeah.
Okay.
And croissants and all of that sort of
Great.
stuff. My point being is that life's too complex to think that we can fix our health by taking something. Now, all of that stuff that I'm talking about, I do sugar and I do milk and I do gelatin and I do all that stuff, that works for me, but it also works for me in the fact that I've got two beautiful sons who I adore more than anything in the world. I've got a beautiful wife. I love the work that I do. I live in California. All my friends are back in London, right? And I have a life that I really find meaningful. I can drink all the Coca-Cola in the world, or whatever, right? Or Paleo
The
diets.
thing is, you have to leave the country to get.
Yeah, but I could take the magic pill every day, and if my
Yeah.
life is devoid of meaning or devoid of quality, we call it environmental enrichment. And if you look at lab animals, so they go to such extreme lengths to prevent lab animals, from having any environmental enrichment by even blanketing them so they can't move. So they'll keep them fed and watered, but the poor animal can't move. Like, these animals die so quickly of all the inflammatory diseases.
Yeah.
The animals that are given coloured balls and mazes and tubes and music and breeze and all of these other things, they live long, healthy, robust lives.
Connection.
Yeah. Connection, absolutely.
Stimulation.
So that was two. And the third one, I think sleep's underrated. Especially in America.
I'm so huge on sleep.
Yeah, I think.
And it's like every source, even in our a transformational personal growth program, sleep is a conversation. Sleep is it's
Yeah, it's
I'm
insane.
a big sleeper, so and I notice a huge difference.
I get this idea that you've only got a limited amount of time on Earth, and therefore, sleep for 6 hours, so you get an extra 2 hours in the day. 2 hours to do what? Be a zombie. I enjoy sleep.
Not if you have your coffee.
Sorry?
Not if you have your coffee.
No, but I wouldn't use coffee I have used coffee as a crutch, but if I'm so tired that I wake up that I need coffee, I wake up and want coffee. There's a difference.
Yes.
Right? I don't need it.
Okay.
I wake up starving hungry in the morning and feeling like, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
Because I go to bed relatively early, and if I don't feel that way, I'll go back to bed.
Right.
Just put everything on. I've got a brilliant assistant. I'm just put everything on standby. Just tell them I'm busy. I'm sleeping.
I love that. And lastly, so I know some of the stuff we've talked about has been related to it, but I want to talk about your book. If you could share a little bit about what that's about, what you're excited about with it.
So by the way, I've got a little health book that I wrote. It's called The Skinny on Skinny. It's all about why skinny is not healthy. And if anyone wants that, I think you can buy it for $5. But if anyone wants a copy, I'll send an e-copy for free. You can email me. Actually, email Olga.
Careful what you offer.
Olga at olga@mikeweeks.co, and she will, or maybe we'll just put it on my website, which by the way there's a new website going up tonight, because the old one is way out of date. But we'll put it up there for free anyway if anyone wants it. It's 120 pages of some of the stuff I've been talking about.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. My new book that's coming out at Random House that is launched March 2nd is called Untrain Your Brain, a formula for freedom from the neurons that hold you back. We talked a lot about food and biology, and my actual work is I help people to have better experiences of the world and make those experiences stick.
Yeah.
A lot of people call it coaching. I call it something else. And I work as a change agent because it's
change agent.
As a change
What
agent.
is it?
I
like that.
And so my book is about the last 11 years of working in change processes all around the world, from billionaire businessmen to working with kids in the slums of Haiti, or working in the world's worst addiction centres in Ukraine. And it's the processes, it's a snapshot of the processes of how to basically get the maximum capacity out of your nervous system, your neurology. It's an operating manual to be able to experience the world and keep a resourceful state.
So when is that book coming out?
2nd of March it's launched. You can pre-order it on Amazon now. You can pre-order it on Amazon on amazon.co.uk, so you can get it on Kindle.
Untrain your brain.
Untrain your brain.
What's your website?
Yeah. MikeWeeks.co. If you go to .com, you'll get sold real estate. He got there before I did.
We'll put it on the notes.
Yeah, MikeWeeks.co. And there's a new website going up tonight. I've been traditionally lousy at putting content on, but I've vowed and declared I'm going to start putting stuff out. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Well, that was amazing. Thank you for
My
sharing.
absolute pleasure. Anytime. We've just got started.
I know.
Yeah.
Your insight is
Yeah.
very interesting.
There's an iceberg just waiting to be
Yes.
looked at. Cool.
Yeah,
For
thank you
sure.
so much. We'll definitely post your information and
And
also,
I'll send
some
you
of the
1,000
resources
references.
the resources that you talked about. I'm definitely interested in diving into.
I know.
Cool. Good.
So,
I'm so glad you were here
Yay.
for this.
Let's go and get a Coke.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, let's go
Get
dine.
some Coke.
We need some sugar. Organic cane sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Bye, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. I hope you were as inspired as I was for that last message. So powerful, so powerful. And remember, if you have friends and family that also have powerful messages, we want to get them out. They deserve to be heard because we all learn from each other, and there are so many unique ways of healing ourselves that doctors don't even know about. I don't even know about until someone shares with me. So support the mainstream mission. Let's show everyone that there is another way, and let's crush the word alternative so that it's care. We are just being in self-care and proactive about our health, which is our wealth, and yeah, that's what it's all about here at Health Addict and the Mainstream Mission. So please share, and thank you so much again for joining us, and we'll talk to you on the next one. Have a beautiful and blessed day. Bye.